Welcome back, everybody. We are here in our very special series of Joyful Journeys celebrating Women's Equality Day this year. I am so thrilled to be joined by a very good friend and colleague of mine, Shanika McCloud. We know each other through the Loudoun Chamber of Commerce, where we both sit on the Business Women of Loudoun Committee, which is a phenomenal committee of women doing amazing things in the business community and beyond out in Loudoun County. Shanika is a financial advisor with a major financial institution in the United States. And Shanika, thank you so much for being here with us today.
Thank you for having me, Ashley. I'm so excited to be here.
Yeah, awesome. So tell us a little bit about yourself and specifically your journey of how you got into wealth management as a career.
Sure, I would love to. So, my journey started several years ago after the passing of my father. He passed very unexpectedly due to a cancer that he developed. It was a very progressive cancer, and he was diagnosed in October and he passed in March of that following year. And so it was very unexpected. It left our family very unprepared. And as a result, we were left to pick up the pieces. He was the primary breadwinner. My mom was retired at the time, and we were really just struggling to figure out what to do. And so a close family friend of ours recommended that we sit with her financial advisor. And I went to that meeting with my mom and my brother. And that financial advisor actually became my mentor and brought me into the business. And so that's where my journey started. It's been a really great ride thus far. I love everything about this industry. And what brings me the most joy is being able to help and educate people around their finances. It's very rewarding and I just love it.
Yeah, I mean, that is so heartbreaking of a story of where this career came from, but finding strength in what was, a weakness at the time and turning it into a career is incredibly inspiring. Mentioning that educational component, I imagine that in that initial process, you yourself went through a really kind of eye-opening experience with that education part of financial health.
Yes, absolutely. It was very eye-opening because even at the time, I remember being a mom, new mom. I had young children, and my husband and I didn't even have outside insurance policies. We only had the minimal amount of insurance that our employers provided. And
Mhm.
so we didn't have extra policies, and it was very eye-opening at the time to see what unfolded with my parents, and realizing that there was also things that needed to be taken care of in my own home that I hadn't addressed because I didn't know. And so knowledge is power, and I try to empower people with financial knowledge. That's always the goal.
Yeah, yeah. So thinking of the financial industry and your role in it, like you mentioned, that you have that passion for guiding and educating people to what's going to work best for them. Statistics show us that only 31% of wealth advisors in the US, folks just like you, are women. So why do you think it's so important and critical for us to have female representation in this industry that has been started, run on the backs of men for, the centuries that our country has existed and our financial institutions have existed?
Yes, it's interesting. When I came into this industry, I remember going to conferences where I was literally one of maybe four female advisors in the room of
Oh,
200 plus people. And so when you think about those numbers, you realize that the segment of women financial advisors in the industry is a very small segment. And to be a minority in the industry is even smaller. And so when you think about the general population, representation matters. It absolutely matters. And it matters because we're part of this community. Women are a large part of the community. And typically, we outlive our male counterparts by 5 to 10 years on average. And so, what we see happening and what the future is, forecasting is a wealth transfer that's about to happen over the next 10 to 20 years, where we have these baby boomers who are aging, they're headed into retirement, they're already in retirement. and their male counterparts will be passing, and the wealth will be inherited by their spouses. And so, as a women advisor, we just bring a different perspective to what we do as far as financial planning. We serve as models, role models for women. We encourage each other. We pursue some of the similar careers. And what we do in this industry is we help to break down the gender barriers that have been there for so long. And so, some of the financial challenges that we face as women are unique to us as women.
Mhm.
One, like living longer. So we have to be more prepared than our male counterparts because we could potentially live another 10, 20, 30 years after our spouses pass away or our loved one passes away. So there's an additional expense around healthcare, caregiving. And then, when you think about things like the wage gap that exists between men and women, we have to
Mhm.
address those things with women when we talk about planning. And so female advisors just seem to be more attuned to issues that us as women deal with, and we're better equipped to provide some of the relevant guidance that a woman would need as far as her finances are concerned.
That makes complete sense. Yeah, the trajectories of our lives can look very different to
Mhm.
our partners and our spouses because of that health disparity that just naturally exists. I'm sure a lot of our listeners can relate to that in one way, shape, or form. I know personally, I also lost my father at a very young age and know I watched my mom do everything on her own.
Yeah.
It was empowering to witness. It was tough at times, but um, there is a very honest truth that our experience as women is vastly different from that of men. And why wouldn't that impact our finances and how we approach our financial health?
Right. Absolutely.
Yeah,
Definitely.
so awesome. So talking about financial health and in the terms of looking at it through a woman's perspective, I feel that there is often a hesitancy to discuss finances. I know it's for a very long time been a taboo subject. Um,
Mhm.
but what do you think is one action or one conversation that us as women can start to feel more empowered in our financial health?
Sure. So, you made a good point in asking the question is that it's almost a taboo topic. And when you think about finances, you realize that these are conversations that most households are not having, including my household when I was a child. I don't remember sitting with my parents at the kitchen table and talking about finances. And most of the clients that we work with, they weren't having those conversations either. And so it really becomes a situation where you're learning as you go into the workforce how to manage your finances for better or worse, whatever you've picked up from home, from friends, from coworkers, you're learning to navigate that territory blindly almost because you were not educated. And so it really comes down to educating yourself. Financial literacy is a critical step to feeling more empowered around your finances, and just understanding concepts that we don't talk about regularly, like budgeting. Most people cringe when they hear the word budget. Even myself, when I take a vacation, we budget. It's something that you should be doing regularly. Saving is another one that's really important to preparing you for your financial future and beyond. Investing and managing your credit, just conversations that we should be having regularly, and making sure that you are clearly understanding the intricacies of each one of these. You can also choose to hire or see a professional like myself. I think that that's one thing that can also be very empowering because if you're not an expert in something, typically you may want to enlist an expert that is. So maybe having someone on your side that can manage your finances for you if that's just something you'd like to be more hands off on. And then I think most importantly, Ashley, is having a positive mindset towards money. A lot of times, like you said, it's kind of taboo. There are these negative connotations or thoughts around money, but being more positive and feeling empowered in the education that you are learning, and I think by, taking control of your finances, you start to feel that positive energy, and you start to think about your life in a different light as far as your financial future is concerned.
That makes complete sense. And as you were talking through that, it reminded me of a concept that we teach the girls at Girls on the
Mhm,
Run.
mhm.
And it's specifically about positive self-talk. But we do this
Yeah.
activity where we force them to write a negative self-talk statement and then rethink how they can flip it into a positive. And I think that practice alone could be good with finances and thinking about money.
Mhm,
Right? So many
mhm.
people do have that negative connotation, or they're scared, or it's, well, I'm just not going to think about it because it's daunting. Well, how can we instead think of it and flip it around to a positive? Well, it's daunting right now, but let me go ahead and do some research so I feel more empowered on the back end. And then that's turning
Mm.
it into a positive. So I really like that concept that you mentioned of starting to think of it in a positive light instead of a negative one.
Mhm.
Awesome. So also thinking about our youth, the girls that we work with at Girls on the Run, our participants, and just youth in general. Uh, you mentioned it, that kitchen table talks. What's something, a piece of advice you would give to parents or caregivers to really start those conversations with their young ones, so that our children maybe don't have to go through this learning curve when they hit the workforce. They've already learned a little bit about it. How can parents empower their youth and in their lives around financial health?
Yes, I'm so glad that you're asking me this question. It's a great question, and I think the sooner the better. Parents can start by introducing these concepts early in childhood, and they can do this by maybe sitting down and playing a game. I remember like Monopoly. I think about Monopoly.
So
Monopoly is one that comes to mind immediately, where it's teaching money concepts, where you're buying properties, you're selling properties. There's a banker that you have to deal with that's giving you your check, your money, and
Mhm.
you have to manage the money to see, to basically win the game.
I
So
remember always
game
landing on income tax and being so mad that I had to pay it. What do you mean I have to pay income tax? My mom was like, just wait,
exactly.
you're gonna get it.
Exactly. So I think that, the sooner the better, and using games or toys is a really great way, a great tool to introduce some of these concepts. Also being a good role model as far as your finances are concerned and bringing them into the conversation. In our household, we talk to our kids. I buy them books that talk to them about managing, balancing their finances, saving. The books also talk about investing, and so it just kind of opens the door to those conversations. My daughter just came home from a camp last week, and one of the things that they talked about was budgeting. And so she has a budget sheet that we'll be working through. But just having the conversations, and maybe even another thought is taking them to the bank with you when you go to the bank and explaining what you're doing there. Maybe showing them how to use an ATM and your online banking, but just being more open to having the conversations, and teaching them, and them seeing you manage your money is how they will start to learn themselves, so that it's not such a foreign concept when they get into the work world. They're not learning it. They are thinking back to the conversations that they had with mom and dad at the kitchen table about budgeting and about saving and about retirement and investing. Those conversations are already there in their mind. So they're thinking back, and they're putting those things into play and implementing all of the things that they learned, maybe even when they were playing Monopoly.
Yeah.
So the sooner the better. It's just being more open. It's not a taboo conversation. It is something that we should all be talking about, even amongst ourselves, but just being more open, and having the conversations, not being closed off to it.
100%. That is such great pieces of advice. Hope our parents and caregivers listening in can take some of those nuggets and put them into play to empower your kids. So one last question, going to take it back kind of to you being a woman in the financial sector. What advice would you give, to maybe a college student or a high schooler who math is their thing, it's their passion, and maybe they're thinking of going into wealth management and they're a woman. What advice would you give them as they start their journey?
So I think the best thing is to seek someone out that's in the industry. And there's so many ways to do that. I think, LinkedIn is a great tool where you can actually see what someone's profession is, what company they work for, and you can reach out to them proactively, and have a conversation with them. I think that's probably the best way for a college student to find out if it's an industry that they would want to go into. It is very rewarding. And like I said at the beginning of our conversation, I absolutely love it. I don't feel like that I chose this industry by choice. I always say that it chose me because I didn't seek it out coming out of college. But at the same time, if someone is has questions, I know that a lot of the women that I've encountered in the industry, they're very open to having the conversation. They want to talk about their experience and what they're doing to help people. And so just reaching out and being proactive and finding someone in your network or like I said, maybe using social media as a tool to find those people as well.
Awesome. Such great advice. Well, Shanika, thank you so much for
Thank
joining
you.
us and sharing your journey with us. We hope our listeners got a lot out of today, talking about a topic that I think a lot of us don't get exposed to a lot. So I love that we're also shining light on that as well. And thank you for being a trailblazer, for walking into those rooms where you're, like you said, hundreds of people and maybe one of five women. The bravery that you carry inspires us all. So thank you so much, Shanika.
Thank you so much for having me. It's been a pleasure, and I look forward to maybe doing it again. Thank you.
This episode of Joyful Journeys is brought to you by Girls on the Run of Northern Virginia.